that animal yesterday that I was saying, something's just the animal, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on, and the animal was just kind of real slow moving. That animal actually has a messed up foot. I was taking a look at him this morning because he was walking up here, and he was kind of just limping a little bit, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And I realized he's got a bad foot, but the foot is kind of like popping in and out. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but it's not so bad that he's not putting weight on it. These cattle, when their foot gets real messed up, they'll stop putting weight on it, and I think he just sprained his. I think he sprained his foot. I think he sprained his leg, but that's what's going on. That's why the calf is looking a little wonky, is because he's got a bad foot. I think he sprained his leg pretty bad, but it's not so bad that he's refusing to put weight on it. All right, if the leg was real bad, he would be hopping around on three legs, and he would put absolutely zero weight on it. Like when he's standing at the feed bunk right here eating, he wouldn't put any weight on it. He would be sitting there eating with one foot up in the air, and it's not that bad. And his foot almost looks like it's popping in and out. And I was like, dang, it looked broken, but it's not broken. It can't be broken, because if it was broken, he wouldn't be walking on it, right? I mean, it would, a broken leg is pretty major, and these animals weigh a lot. I mean, it's gonna hurt real bad. And so I'm like, it can't be broken, but he does have a bad foot, and I'll keep an eye on that. But it's not so bad that he's not putting any weight on it. And this morning, I actually started adding distiller grains I started adding dolomite lime to the distiller grains. I've been reading about dolomite lime, agricultural dolomite lime. It's a calcium, magnesium. But there he goes right there. That's him right there. That's the one with the bad leg. And you can see he's hobbling on that back left foot, but he's still putting weight on it. But that's why he's moving so slow, is because his back left foot is something's wrong with his back left foot. But it's not so bad that it's hurting him to a point where he can't move on it. I think he just sprained his leg pretty bad. And but it's not so bad that I don't think it's anything to be concerned about yet. It should fix itself within a couple of days. Yesterday I was taking a look at him. A couple of days ago I was taking a look at him. I was like, something ain't right with this calf, but it's that back left leg. And this morning, yesterday I was reading into different things, and I've read about adding dolomite lime to the cattle feed to give them a calcium magnesium supplement. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, this is a good idea. A dolomite lime. I went to the local department store, and I found some high grade dolomite lime. It's a 95% calcium carbonate, and it's 22% calcium and 21% magnesium. And 100 pounds of distiller grains. I feed these animals about 100 pounds of distiller grains a day. 100 pounds of distiller grains is about half a pound of phosphorus, and then 1 pound of 5 pounds of dolomite. Okay, so the whole thing about the calcium phosphorus ratio for cattle diets is that the ratio really needs to be about 2 to 1 calcium to phosphorus. Or if you don't have that ratio, the animals will actually start to have dietary problems, urinary calculi, and things like that. There could be issues with the phosphorus calcium ratio. And so the calcium phosphorus ratio, you have to really try and keep it at least 1.5 to 1, but you really want to be at 2 to 1 calcium to phosphorus ratio. Okay, and the calcium to phosphorus ratio, the 2 to 1 calcium to phosphorus ratio, the distiller grains that I'm feeding these animals is effectively it's about half a pound of phosphorus a day. Okay, it is about half a pound of phosphorus a day, and 1 pound of dolomite lime. Dolomite lime is effectively 23% calcium. And so if I feed half a pound of phosphorus, I need to feed about 1 pound. Distiller grains is about 0.4, 0.5 pounds, something like that. Somewhere between a 0.4 and 0.5% phosphorus. And so for me to feed a 2 to 1 calcium to phosphorus ratio of the distiller grains, the half a 0.4 to 0.5 pounds of phosphorus, I need to feed the animals about 0.8 to about 1 pound of calcium. And 1 pound of calcium is 0.22 pounds of 1 pound of dolomite lime is 0.22 pounds of calcium. And so I'm feeding about 3 to 4 pounds of Dolomite Lime. I put I put 3 pounds of Dolomite Lime in the cattle feed this morning, in the distiller grains this morning as a mixture. I mixed it in with the distiller grains, and that's also the white powder that you see in the feed troughs on the short. That's that white powder. That's the Dolomite Lime, and so that's how I ran the calculation. 100 pounds of distiller grains is about 0.4 to 0.5 pounds of phosphorus. And if I'm feeding 0.4 to 0.5 pounds of phosphorus, I need to feed about 0.9 pounds of Dolomite Lime. Or excuse me, I need to feed about 0.9 pounds of calcium. And Dolomite Lime is about 23% calcium. And so I need to feed, I've fed about 3.5, 4 pounds, something like that. I fed about 3 to 4 pounds, 3.5 pounds of Dolomite Lime this morning. I started doing that this morning. And also the big benefit of Dolomite Lime is that it also has a magnesium. It also has magnesium in it. And magnesium will also, if the grass is low in magnesium, the animals will develop grass tetany. And that magnesium supplement will also help them not develop grass tetany. And also, the Dolomite Lime, it won't really do a whole lot in terms of raising the pH of the rumen. You need to feed the animal a lot of Dolomite Lime to legitimately raise the pH of the rumen, but it does have a little bit of an alkaline effect. All right, the sulfur, the whole thing about the sulfur in the distiller grains, there's a lot of sulfur in the distiller grains, and that sulfur, it does drastically reduce, if you feed too much distiller grains, your animals can get acidosis because of that sulfur. It will substantially reduce the pH of the rumen. And so the Dolomite Lime also has a little bit of an alkaline effect, but you need to feed the animal a lot of Dolomite Lime to get it to actually significantly push the rumen pH up. But it still does a little bit, okay? It still does help a little bit. But the big reason why I did this was now I don't have to be concerned about the animals not getting enough calcium in their diet. That's one of the biggest things that you worry about. That's one of the biggest things that I worry about when I feed the cattle. And you should worry about it too. The reason that you don't want to feed an animal a whole bunch of distiller grains is because that distiller grains will, the phosphorus to calcium ratio, there's substantially more phosphorus than calcium in the distiller grains. And that could cause urinary calculi and all sorts of health problems in the cattle. And, doing this may also, allow me to feed the animal, it'll let me feed the animal a little bit more and with peace of mind, right? I don't have to be concerned about the animals not getting enough calcium to, prevent, I can prevent the urinary calculi. I don't have to worry about the animals not getting enough calcium. And so that's something that I started doing this morning. And I fed about 100 pounds of distiller grains, and I fed about 3-4 pounds of Dolomite Lime as well. And so today, the big thing about today is that I'm going to go into the whole thing about pulling money out of a business. Okay, how do I plan on pulling money out of a business? And I've actually talked about this topic in the past. There are a few ways that you should not pull money out of a business. Okay, there are multiple ways that you should not pull money out of a business. The big one is don't put assets on your business and then pull the money out of your business and then bankrupt the business. Okay, don't be a twat, right? I've always said if you legitimately start a business with the idea of you're gonna open up a business, an LLC or whatever, and then you're just gonna pull all the money out of the LLC and then you're gonna bankrupt it, then you're an idiot, okay? And go throw yourself off a bridge, right? Don't do that, okay? Because if you do that, there are people that do this, and it's why, right? You're obviously not dumb, right? You're obviously not unintelligent, right? It's why would you go and do that? If you legitimately focused yourself on doing something well, if you focused yourself on doing something else and you did something that was more morally responsible, I'm sure you could find a way to do something well for yourself. All right, I'm sure you could find a way to do something good for yourself. You don't have to sit here and be a twat for the rest of your life. You don't have to sit here and be a moron for the rest of your life, right? And so you don't have to be a moron for the rest of your life. And the whole thing about how am I planning to pull money out of a business, right? How am I looking to pull money out of the business? All right, there will be a substantial amount of money. You have to understand that the big thing is that and you know the whole thing about yesterday, and the whole thing about if the only thing you have is a house and a car, and all of that stuff, and I've always said that money is it doesn't do anything. Okay, regardless of the money. And here's the thing. I mean, there are a lot, and I've always said that there is no amount of money that will save you from being a moron, right? There is no amount of money that will save you from being an idiot. You could legitimately have $10 billion and you could lose everything, all right? There is no amount of money that will save you from being an idiot, and at the end of the day, the money doesn't even do anything. All right, after a certain point, the money does not do anything. I guarantee it, Warren Buffett is not sitting there in a room going, oh my God, if I just had $10 billion more, then I could go and live my dream. He's not doing that, all right? Money, after a certain point, it does not do anything. Money only does something if you have something that you can do with it that will actually, produce something. Money itself does not do anything. Like, if you legitimately, have an idea for utilizing capital to, to whatever, grow a business or whatever, then sure, money does do something, but at the end of the day, money itself does not do anything. It's just a number in the bank account. It's just sitting there. All right. Granted that you have, enough money to do, that to not worry about money. That's effectively all of the money that you ever really even, that's all, the money, up until that point, after that, it doesn't even, after that, it doesn't even do anything, okay? And the whole thing, there is no amount of money that will save you from being a moron, all right? There is no amount of money that will save you from being an idiot. How do you save an idiot from themselves? You can't, all right? And so, the whole thing, and this is a very realistic way to look at it. There are a lot of quote-unquote rich people. There are a lot of people, especially on the internet. The internet is like a cesspool for this. There are a lot of people, on the internet, right? And it just is what it is. I'm not a malicious person. I'm not a hateful person. it just is what it is, okay? There are a lot of people that, it's like, even they could be making whatever. They could, and if you ever have somebody who is legitimately looking to convince you that they are doing well with money because they have a nice house and a car and a nice car, then they're poor. I guarantee it. They are poor. Houses and cars do not cost a lot of money. Houses and cars do not cost a lot of money. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a house that's, $25,000 a month. You could be looking at a house that's $40,000 a month. All right, it could be like a freaking mansion. All right, and you may have to pay, this. Oh my God, I pay $40,000 a month for this house. Oh my God, I pay, $10,000 a month. We're talking about 50 grand. 50 grand is nothing. Okay, 50 grand is nothing. It doesn't matter. Okay, it doesn't matter the amount of money we're talking about. The fundamental idea of having a house and a car, and that is no proof of wealth. That is not a proof of wealth. Okay. Oh man, and that animal's he's wobbling around on it, but I mean he's still putting weight on it, but he's still wobbling around on it. He's walking up to the water, but it's not a proof of any sort of wealth. It doesn't, it doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, a house and a car does not mean anything, okay? The whole thing about how am I looking to pull money out of my business, and I've already gone through the fundamental ideas of my business. How am I looking to pull money out of my business? Okay, so my business, the assets in my business are effectively growing all the time, okay? This is gonna build the foundation of understanding. The assets on my business, I'm effectively a value-add commodity trader, okay? Commodities are a very valuable asset. They're a very stable asset, all right? And they are effectively, the price of a commodity is the price of a commodity. All right, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. The price of a commodity is set by the commodity market, okay? The price of a commodity is not like an opinion. It doesn't matter, okay? It is, the price of a commodity is the price of a commodity. And so I'm effectively a value-add commodity trader, and my commodities are going up in value all the time, all right? Granted that I continue to do my part, right? I don't suddenly start going and doing drugs. I don't go and start, go on a magical journey and YOLO, and granted that I don't do that kind of stuff. My assets are effectively growing in value all the time. And the way that I see it, my whole thing about, when do I liquidate cattle? And when I liquidate cattle, I put all the money back into my business. And when I put all the money back into my business, that is an investment, right? I'm effectively, looking to invest the money. And when I invest money, I do not see it as an expense. I do not see investing money as an expense. I see it like putting money into a savings account. When I invest capital, I see it like I put money into a savings account, right? The money is still there. It's just not cash. It's an asset. It may not be cash, but it is still worth money. I still have an asset, okay? And so the asset portfolio is always growing. Granted that I am doing my part, taking care of the animals, etc., etc. All right. Granted that I do my part and run the business. The assets are growing. Okay. The assets are growing in value. Eventually, what will happen when I reinvest my money and I put that money back into my business? And already, when my animals, if I liquidate all of my animals at 800 pounds, I will already be sitting on a large amount of positive equity. All right. And, my whole thing about it is that I will put the money back into the business. I buy the animals small and I sell them big. Okay. And so when I do this, it will naturally, the whole thing about the pools of money, and I'm not going to fiddle diddle with the money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of energy. I'm just going to let the pools of money be. I'm just going to let the pools of money be. And the whole thing about the pools of money is that, granted that I continue to run the business, all of the pools of money will grow bigger at the same time. That's the big idea. All of the pools of money will grow bigger at the same time. And so, when I put the money back into my business, when I liquidate my cattle and I put that money back into my business, I do not see that as an expense. I see that as me investing capital, and me investing capital, it's just like me putting money in a savings account. It gives me something to leverage against, but also when I put that money back into my business and I grow my asset sheet, I grow the number of assets that I'm appreciating at the same time. That will actually increase the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis. All right? That will increase the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis. And that is also my money. All right. It's regardless of whether I invest the bank's money or my money, the money that I make on top of the money is always my money. That's the unrealized gain. And granted that my asset portfolio is not leveraged more than 80%. I don't have, more than 80% leverage on my balance sheet. I'm not concerned about it. I'm not concerned about, paying the bank back their principal. I'm not concerned about it. Granted that my balance sheet is over 80 or under 80% leveraged, I am not concerned about paying the bank back their money. I pay them their interest, okay? I pay interest. I don't pay back the principal. I pay back the interest, okay? I pay the interest on the loan. And so, okay, when I go over all this stuff, and there are a few ways to not pull money out of your business, all right? And I've always said that if you're scraping money off of your business, like if the reason, and this happens to a lot of people, all right, if you are pulling money off of your business because you are looking to spend that money to go and do something else, you're going to go on your journey, right? You're going to go on a journey. Oh my God, well, I want to buy a new truck. Oh my God, well, I want to buy a new house. Oh my God, well, I want to, I have to pay for my bills. Nobody cares, all right? This is a sign that you're going to be poor for the rest of your life, or you'll barely make enough to get by, all right? This is a very clear indicator of you not doing well financially, all right? Nobody cares about your dream. Nobody cares, all right? Me, what I do with money is I put all of the money back into my business, okay? All of it goes back into my business. And once the asset is stable, I dump the money back into my business. And once I have stabilized the investment, now I have a foundation to leverage against. When I invest money back into my business, I see that as a savings account. I have equity in the herd. If I legitimately felt like giving up the cattle business and not farming anymore, I could just sell all my animals, pay the bank back their money, and I will still have my equity. I will still have the money that I have put in the cattle herd, right? I will still have my equity. And so, and if I legitimately need money, granted that I don't develop some major spending problem, and here is the amount of the amount of money that we're talking about. And this is also what I mean by, as long as I don't develop a spending problem, I will effectively have enough money to live the rest of my life and never worry about anything and nobody's paying me to do anything, trust me, money is whatever to me. All right, I guarantee it. Nobody's paying me to do anything. I don't care if you're going to give me $50 million. Keep it to yourself and throw yourself into a hole. All right, hold on to your money and throw yourself into a hole. You're not paying me to do anything. Nobody's paying me to do anything. I guarantee it. All right, I already make plenty of money. I don't worry about money. All right, and the amount of money that I'm making is going upwards very quickly. Nobody's paying me to do anything. Don't play yourself. All right. What are you, are you mentally handicapped? All right. Don't offer me your worthless deal. I don't care. Legitimately, I don't care. If you died tomorrow, it wouldn't mean anything to me. I don't care if you're going to offer me $50 million. I don't care. All right. It's not going to do anything for me. If I legitimately wanted $50 million, like if I legitimately was, oh my God, I want $50 million, I would run more cattle. I wouldn't go on a magical journey. I wouldn't be going, looking I wouldn't be looking to be your friend. All right. Don't play yourself. All right. It doesn't matter how much, I don't care. All right. The money is whatever to me. It doesn't even matter. All right. And the whole thing about, okay, so what kind of money are we talking about and how am I going to do it? So I have an asset sheet, right? I have a balance sheet. Excuse me. I have assets on a balance sheet. And these assets are effectively growing in value all the time. Granted that I do my part. Eventually, what's going to happen? Even now, if I sold all my animals at 800 pounds, I would effectively have, over a 20% positive equity. My balance sheet would be less than 80% leveraged. Okay. And my whole big thing is that I will be reinvesting the money back into my business. Starting about next month, I'll be effectively selling 5 and buying 15. I may even be selling 5 and buying 20. And, it depends, I need to redo my loans too. And, the whole thing about it, how am I looking to pull money out of my business? So I will have a balance sheet, right? I have a balance sheet and these assets on my balance sheet are growing in value. I'm already, under 80% leveraged, right? And my assets are still growing in value, and I'm reinvesting the money back into the business, and that's causing my total equity position to even go higher in value, right? And so, eventually within about 3 months, I will be in a situation where I am about 30% leveraged. I am 30% leveraged, and I may have, I'll probably be about 30% leveraged. And I will probably have somewhere around 75 and 100 cattle, okay? And if I have a 75 and 100 cattle, if I have 75 to 100 cattle and I'm 30% leveraged, we're effectively talking about me needing to take a loan for about another, 50, 60 cattle. And you also need to consider that the value of the cattle will be growing on a monthly basis. Granted that I do my part and I take care of the animals, right? And, that's the money in pool number 2. And I'm also looking to leverage against pool number 2. I really need to start leveraging against pool number 2 because pool number 2 is my largest source of money. There is a lot of money in pool number 2. And this is also what I mean by I can just leverage against my assets to have access to money if I need it. Okay. I can just leverage against my assets. I can just hold my assets for collateral and take a loan. Okay. I can just leverage against my assets. I don't need to be using the cash. And so, here in about 3 months, I would effectively, it's going to be about $100,000. I will be pulling about $100,000 out of my business. And and the reason that I will do that is because the amount of leverage, I need to redo my loans, and that's going to take some time. All right. I do have a little bit of money left that I can use in terms of the loans. I can probably run my business for about another 2 months, and then I'll run out of loan money. All right. I can probably run my business for about another 3 months, and then I will run out of loan money. And, but at that point, I will have substantially increased the size of my balance sheet. I will be producing substantially more money. I may be able to pay back the entire sum of my loan with just 1 month worth of money that I make. All right. And so, so with everything, the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet is gradually falling. It's actually falling very quickly, and it's falling faster. Every single month that goes by, it's actually falling faster. Every day that goes by, it's falling even faster because the size of my herd will increase. And I will be able to increase the size of my herd by just reinvesting the money that I make when I sell my big animals. And so, I figured that within about 3 months, I can pull about $100,000 out of my business, and it won't do anything. All right, it won't damage my business. It won't slow my business down. And the whole reasoning behind it is so that I can take a loan for $100,000. I can pull the $100,000 cash out of my business. I can take a loan for $100,000. I can invest the $100,000 into my business while I hold the $100,000 cash, and that will effectively add more animals to the herd. And if it comes down to it, I still have the $100,000, right? I still have the $100,000 cash. If I legitimately need to use that money, it's cash. I can use the money, right? I can put that money back into my business or whatever. And in all honesty, if I find a way to legitimately invest all $100,000 and take a loan against 50%, like if I'm at 30% leverage and I need to take a loan for 50% more, and I can take the $100,000 that I have cash and invest all of that money and then leverage against 80. Like if I legitimately have a way to invest $180,000 cash and against 50% of my herd, I would rather do that than pull the money out of my business. I would rather do that. All right, but very realistically, what's going to happen here in about 3 months? In all honesty, what will probably happen is that my leverage will fall to about 30%. The amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet will fall to about 30%. I can use enough debt. I have enough debt to purchase about 10 cattle that will keep my business running for about 2 months. If I sell 5 and I buy 15, I can effectively do that for 2 months before I run out of debt. All right, before I run out of debt. But when I do that, I will be appreciating 15 animals at a time and not 5. All right, that will produce me even more money. And so realistically, within about 3 months, I will be in a situation where the amount of debt that I have on my portfolio is effectively 30% or less. All right. So and here's the thing, and I will also, and I will be making, probably very close to about $70,000 or $80,000 a month. Okay, I will be making about $70,000 or $80,000 a month, something like that. It may be, 60, 70, 70,000, something like that dollars a month. And so what I figured, but here's the thing: if I can invest all $70,000 that I make in the month, and I can leverage against 50% of my herd, and I can leverage against 80% of the $70,000, I would rather do that. But here's the thing: that means I would have to invest like $250,000, right? I mean, it would be a large sum of money. If I'm going to take a loan against half of the equitable evaluation of my cattle herd, right? And that right there alone would be like $100,000, right? That would be like $125,000, and then I would have to invest the $70,000 that I make on a monthly basis. That'd be like $175,000, $200,000, and then I would have to take a loan for another 80% of the $70,000 that I just made. That'd be like another $50,000. It'd be like $250,000. I would have to invest $250,000 in a month just to keep my balance sheet at 80% leverage, and I probably will not be able to do that, right? I probably won't. I will try. I will do my best to do that. I will, if I find a way to do that, I will do it. All right. If I find a way to do it, I will do it. But that would be like me preconditioning 200 cattle a month. I would have to precondition 200 cattle a month to do that. All right. Even if I get a guy to build a barn for me and drill a well for me, and I go and buy myself a new truck, and then I get a guy with the drone out here to herbicide the field, and I hire, veterinarians to give the animal shots and everything. I mean, that still will not be $250,000. But that's where the $250,000 is coming from, right? The 50% leverage that I would take against my herd to get my balance sheet up to 80% leveraged. That would be, I would have to do that. And then I'd also be making about $70,000 a month. And then I would be looking to leverage against 80%, if not all $70,000, at least 80% of that $70,000 that I'm making on a monthly basis. I would have to leverage against all of that to get my balance sheet up to 80%. And if I grew the size of my herd, the money that I make on a monthly basis will go upwards too. And so this is the big idea for pulling money out of the business. I will start pulling money out of the business. And this is also what I mean by pool number 4 will naturally start to form on its own. Because anytime that I take a look at my balance sheet and I say there is just a lot of, like, my positive equity position is like exceeding, 50%. All right. If I have 70% equity and 30% debt on my balance sheet, I will invest with straight debt to get the amount of debt that I have on my balance sheet higher, right? And then I will pull the cash out of my business. I will pull cash out of the business. All right, I will pull money out of the business. I'll start holding on to the cash and I will invest with straight leverage so that I can increase the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet. And, and I figured, and here's the thing about I pull about 100 grand. Is that if I pull $100,000 out of my business, right, and my business is making about, I realistically within about 3 or 4 months, I'll be making something like $100,000 a month. And when I'm making $100,000 a month, $100,000 would be 1 month worth of money that I make, right? It would be 1 month worth of money that I make in my business. But that 1 month, the 100 grand will legitimately cover all of my living expenses for the next 2.5 years. And so here is the long outlook. Here is the big picture idea. $100,000 will legitimately cover all of my living expenses for the next 2.5 years. And $100,000 is how much money my business makes on a monthly basis. That is what I'm looking to accomplish, okay? And I will reasonably get there within about maybe 3-4 months. Making $100,000 a month, 30% leverage, and making 70. It doesn't even have to be $100,000 a month. Even if I'm only making $70,000 a month, if my balance sheet is only 30% leveraged, then I will still pull about $100,000 out of my business, right? Because I have to, for me to get my leverage from 30 to 80%, I would legitimately have to stop leveraging. 50% I would have to leverage against 50% of my herd. That means I would have to go to the sell barn. If I have 100 cattle, I would have to take a loan for 50 more. Right, I would have to take a loan for 50 more, and that means I would have to precondition 50 cattle in a month. All right, and even that would become rough. And it's going to be more than 50 because, I also make the money, right? It's not just the equity of the animal. The equity of the animals are also producing me a check in my hand on a monthly basis, right? There are the 3 pools of money, right? I'm also making a check on a monthly basis. It's not just the equity of my herd, right? And so for me to push the amount of equity that I have downwards, or not push the amount of equity downwards, to keep the same amount of equity in the herd and raise the amount of leverage that I have on the herd, I would have to leverage against all of the money that I make on a monthly basis, and I would have to leverage against 50% of the herd that I still have, right? That's legitimately what I would have to do to push the amount of debt that I have up on my balance sheet. Because when I have a check, I effectively will have a check in my hand every month from now until effectively infinity, okay? That's how I've set up my business, to produce me a stable cash flow every month on a monthly basis, all right? I would have to, when I reinvest that money would increase the amount of equity that I have, right? It would increase the number of animals that I have. And, that increase in equity would also produce me more money on a monthly basis. So I would have to leverage against all of the money that I make on a monthly basis and 50% of my herd. All right, I mean, we're talking about me having to precondition 80 cattle at the same time. All right, it's going to be very rough. All right, if if I can do it, I will do it. I will push to do that. I will push to do that as reasonably as I can. But there's a very realistic possibility that, even if I split my chops open and hire 5 people, I won't be able to do it. All right. There is a very realistic possibility that, that it just is what it is. Okay. And I will go for it as best as I can. All right. The best to my ability, I will do it to the best of my ability. But here's the thing. When I have cash in my bank account, I can always invest that money. If I legitimately see an opportunity to invest the cash, then I will invest the cash. right? I will, once I have my leverage up to about 80%, I can then invest the cash if I so chose to do so, right? It's not like because I pulled the cash out of my business, the cash is just gone. And so this is how I am looking to position myself financially over the next 3 months. My herd will grow. I will start liquidating big animals starting next month, and I will start reinvesting the earnings, and that will grow the size of my balance sheet, and that in itself will produce me more money on a monthly basis. I would reasonably anticipate that I end up with about 30% leverage on my balance sheet within about 3 or 4 months. Within about 3 months, realistically, it'll be about 3 months. It may even be 20% leverage. And for me to increase the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet, I would have to, I would have to take a loan against all of the money that I make on a monthly basis for me to increase the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet at that point. I would have to leverage against every dollar that I make, and I would have to leverage against 50% of my herd. There is a very realistic possibility that I won't be able to do that. It will just turn into a major project very quickly. All right, I mean, now we're talking about preconditioning like 100 cattle at the same time. All right, there's a very realistic possibility that I won't be able to do that. Not yet. I am looking for, my whole thing about preconditioning cattle is that if I'm going to precondition cattle, I need to effectively be there 24/7, because preconditioning cattle, you need to keep an eye on them every single day. All right, you need to make sure that the animals are doing okay every single day. All right, that's, and the whole thing about me preconditioning cattle is that I will look to buy myself a new piece of land. That's the whole thing about the pool number 4. That's the money in pool number 4, right? Pool number 4, I will use that when I use that money, I'm effectively going to create a pool number 5. And, I'll probably end up buying myself, I will realistically probably end up buying myself about a $5 million piece of land, okay? That's what I'm thinking, about $5 million, and I'm not concerned about it. And, maybe even more. I'll have to see, I'll have to see exactly how much money, is involved, and then I'll figure it out. And but I'll pull $100,000 out of my business here in about 3 months, and the reason that I'll do that and how I will do that is to leverage against my assets and invest the leverage. I will take a loan against my assets, invest the leverage, and I will pull the cash out of the business. Okay, and that 1 month worth of the money that I make in 1 month will effectively cover all of my living expenses for the next 2.5 years. Okay, and the thing about the money is that, granted that I do this properly, granted that I don't fiddle fart around, with the pools of money, all of the pools of money will grow at the same time. So, there's a very realistic possibility that within 2 months I will have to pull another 100,000, and another 2 months I'll have to pull another 100,000, and then maybe in another 2 months I'll have to pull 200,000, and I will pull money out of the business. And, but if I need the money, I can always invest the cash. All right. Granted that I don't go and develop some major spending problem. The money is still there. All right. And if, I can pull the money out of the business, and I can always invest the cash if I find an opportunity to do so. And I would actually prefer to invest all of the cash, because if I invest all of the cash, it's like putting money in a savings account, and then I still have the money. It's just not cash. It's an asset, right? And then I can, leverage against the asset, and that will actually increase the amount of money that I can make on a monthly basis even more. So I would prefer to invest all of the cash. When it boils down to it, I would prefer to invest all the cash, but I probably won't be able to do it. And if anything, the amount of cash that I pull out of my business will actually go upwards. That's pool number 4. It will actually go upwards. I may legitimately end up pulling in excess of $1 million, $2 million a year out of my business. And that's pool number 4, right? And if I pull $1 million or $2 million out of my business, and I do that by leveraging against my assets, and I've always said that my number 1 priority is God, and my number 2 priority is my business. All right, like in this whole thing about family, like if I legitimately had a family, like if I legitimately had a kid, my kid would be coming to work with me. All right, they would be running around out on the field while I take care of my cattle. All right, and I'm not gonna sit at home with my kids. That's ridiculous. Why would I do that? All right, I'm not gonna sit at home and you know what, my kid would be coming to my work with me. All right, if I go and look at a $5 million piece of land, my kid would be coming with me. If I go and I'm taking care of my cattle, my kid would come with me. My kid would be at my business with me. You know, business is my number 2 priority. All right, God is my number 1 and business is my number 2. That's it. If I had a family, if I had a kid, my kid would be coming to my business with me. They'd be running around out on the field while I took care of my cattle. If I went in to go and look at a $5 million piece of property, they would come with me to go take a look at a $5 million piece of property. My business is more important. My kid will be coming with me. All right, I'm not going to let the kid die, right? I'm not going to leave the kid to die of exposure and, whatever. But I will take care of the kid, but the kid will be coming to business with me. All right, they'll be running around. If I had a kid, they'd be running around out here on the field with me. I'm not going to sit at home with my kid. That's ridiculous. But business is my number 2 priority. And, and if I pull money out of my business by leveraging against my assets, then I might as well just use the money. And realistically, where is something that I can use money, if we're talking about me, I'm just going to say it, I will probably end up pulling more than $1 million out of my business next year. All right. More than $1 million. And here's the thing. If I have $1 million cash, and I make whatever, and I make $200,000 a month, then I don't care about, I'm not going to say I don't care about the $1 million. That $1 million, I might as well just use it. All right, I might as well just use it. I'm still making $200,000 a month. I still got another $1 million in assets. I still got another $1 million worth of cattle. I still got another $1 million worth of cattle. I still have another, $1 million worth of equipment and land. I have $1 million cash, and I'm making $200,000 a month, and I might as well just use the $1 million, right? I might as well. I pulled it out of my business, and when I pulled it out of my business, I leveraged against my assets, and then I invested the debt, and I pulled the cash equivalent out of the business. And I will only do that when the amount of leverage that I have on my business is significantly lower than 80%. All right, because within 3 months, I will reinvest the money back into my business. I will have more cattle on the front end of the cattle herd, right? I'll have a bunch of small animals, and that will increase the amount of money that I make on a monthly basis. And when that happens, it is going to become very difficult for me to invest that level of capital. The amount of capital that I make will become so large that I probably won't be able to do it. I probably won't be able to invest all that money, even if I split my chops open. And a lot of elbow grease and everything. Get people to build barns, drill wells, fix fences, fly drones. Even if I did all of that, I probably still will not be able to invest the amount of money that I make. And at that point, the amount of leverage that I have on my balance sheet will probably be under 30%. It may be significantly under 30%. All right, it might even be like 15%. And at that point, why would I dump my money back into my business? Because if I dumped my money back into my business, the amount of equity that I have would go up. The amount of leverage that I have would go down, right? And so I would go to the bank at that point and take a loan, invest the debt, and pull the cash out of the business. And when it comes down to it, I can always invest the cash later on if I so chose to do so, all right? And it's going to be a lot of money. I would reasonably anticipate that I end up pulling something like $1 million out of my business next year. It might even be more. It'll be something like $1 million. All right, it'll be something like $1 million. And yeah, it's gonna be a lot of money. All right, and that's when and that's the big idea.